Greetings and welcome to the podcast, Why Are You Sober? I'm your host, Sam, and yes, I am an alcoholic, and I'm also in recovery. This podcast is hopefully a place where we can come together, hear stories about recovery, gain some experience, strength, and hope, and continue exploring the joys of sobriety. If you would like to come on and tell your story, I would love that. You can get in touch with me at asonofrecovery@gmail.com. That is asonofrecovery@gmail.com. Or perhaps you're someone who is struggling with addiction, or you might know someone and you're not sure where to turn. You can also reach out. Addiction does not have to be a losing battle, and no one is alone. There are people and resources ready to help anyone who asks for it. And now, to start the show, let's open with the Serenity Prayer. Good and gracious friend, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Greetings and welcome back to the podcast, Why Are You Sober? I am Sam, the host, and I am really glad to be picking this all back up, especially right before the holidays. I know it has really been a while, like well over a year, and a lot has happened in that year. I really just needed to take a break. With the original format of the podcast, I was just finding trouble. I was having trouble finding people to come on. It seems that people are a little nervous about telling their stories, and I understand that. So I still want to do that. I still want to hear people's stories and have them tell their stories about how they got sober, why they are still sober today. But I'm also going to start including other aspects like readings I'm doing, stuff I'm finding and reading about, and also maybe reading some Reddit stories from different subreddits of like alcohol advice or sober curious or addiction advice, and hear those stories as well. Other things that have been happening in my life. I live in the mountains of Western North Carolina, so we suffered from the Hurricane Helene. Our poor little town was pretty devastated, pretty hard. And so that was a lot that's been happening, especially recently over the past couple of months. And then also the election, that was pretty hard to take. And, I'm not here to debate with anybody about where they are with stuff, but, that hit me and my family pretty hard. But we are being optimistic about the future. And, other than that, just been trying to live life, moved into a house. That's a big adjustment, other things. But, I really was realizing I need to be doing this again. I've been suffering from some depression, especially with everything that's been going on. Life has been a little hard. And, the best way to fight depression and stay sober is by helping and serving other alcoholics. And other addicts. So I'm here. And, speaking of that, I do want to be open to all people who are suffering from addiction and all forms of addiction. I would love to hear stories about getting sober from other drugs and substances, or even process addictions like gambling. That would be amazing. I'm going to start out today with reading a Reddit story. And this story comes from, or this question actually comes from the subreddit Sober Curious. This was posted 3 days ago. And OP says, quitting alcohol feels like losing a friend to me. And I can totally relate to that and understand that. So here's what they ask. I've been on a journey to get sober from weed and alcohol. The longest I've made it without either is 9 days. It's been a roller coaster for me, to say the least. I love to drink. I just love it. It makes me feel confident, makes me more social and less anxious. It truly is a hobby in my life. So much of who I am revolves around drinking. I find myself feeling lonely without it. I'm going to keep working at this and fighting, just feeling extremely depressed and defeated right now. I'd love to hear anyone's stories or thoughts / advice if you felt similar to this. And, I can definitely say that I have felt similar to that. Giving up a substance that you have relied on and has become has become a part of your life and your coping mechanism is very difficult. I totally understand that, especially with weed and alcohol. Both are very addictive and really trip us up. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I do want to read the top comment because I'm really curious about this. So top comment says, I can only share my own experienced thoughts. When I was drinking, I did not think of it as being a negative in my life. I didn't even intend to quit drinking. I had to temporarily during a health issue and decided to keep it going for a while. The longer I went without it, the more my perspective on everything changed. I thought I wouldn't be fun or confident at social engagements without it. I didn't know what I would do for fun, didn't know who I would be, and I realized I didn't actually like that feeling. I didn't like that I was lost within my own brain. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't easy, and it wasn't fun at first to sit in those realizations without drinking and to come to terms with that and decide to unpack it. It helped that I had access to a lot of therapy at the time and could process those feelings as they are coming up. Ultimately, I learned some of those answers the longer I was alcohol-free. I'm still learning things about myself from it. When people said alcohol is a crutch, I didn't understand what it meant. Now I do. Residing in your own body and mind is a muscle, and alcohol can make it atrophy. You'll exercise it more the more you let yourself first sit in, and eventually find your footing to step out of discomfort. It gets stronger and you find you, and then you feel confident because you develop true confidence in yourself. You learn how to trust your judgment again, or for the first time, then you are having fun because you know what activities are truly fun for you, present you, because you've had to actually search for you and find them. It takes time to disconnect your sense of self from who you were when you were drinking, but you're in there. You may not like who you're seeing at first, but you can build a new self to see, and you can make sure you love that one more each day. I love this comment, especially this, the process that this person has gone through and is sharing about that. It's really beautiful. It's a different process than a lot of people. A lot of people go through a group like an AA. Which is what I did. I went through AA, and I am a huge promoter of that. But I know a lot of people aren't particularly keen on going to AA. It's vulnerable. You are in front of people. You are talking in front of people. But, at the beginning, you don't have to talk to people. But still, you are talking to people, and everyone is pretty scared of the religious aspect, often is what I hear from people who don't want to go to AA. But I do love that the first comment talked about therapy, which is the one thing I would mention to the comment to OP is, get a therapist. Like, that is incredibly important. You need someone to be walking alongside of you with this to help you and guide you in how to do this, because what OP needs to do is find a community of people. That is what it comes down to. Getting sober can be lonely, especially if you're trying to do it by yourself. That is why I often recommend to people, go to a group therapy, go to AA, find some people to help you with this and talk about it. Because, there are some contradictory opinions out there, and the people who are continuing to drink often are not the ones who want to support you in quitting, because they feel then that they have to quit as well. Because in their conscience, they're going, I probably need to too. And that is one of the difficult things. So that is what I would tell this person, is to find a group, definitely find a therapist, but then find a group, reach out to family, find some people who want to also be sober with you, because that is what is going to make the biggest difference of all. Doing it, white knuckling it, doing it by yourself. I know people have done it, but I don't know that they're very happy. So that is part of the issue too, is that the community will help you to find happiness. So that is my biggest comment about that. So another thing that I have in my life is I got this wonderful book called Sobriety, A Journey of Recovery Through the Psalms. And sobriety is spelled with a silent P at the beginning, like the word Psalms from the Bible. So regardless of what people choose or believe as far as higher power, I I'm very open to all sorts of kinds of meanings of that. For myself, I grew up in a Christian background, and so that is the path that I follow, is Jesus Christ and God. And I know others don't, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that, and I would love to embrace yours. I have books on Buddhism and sobriety, and also I have books on for people who don't believe, for people who are secular. I have books on that too, on how to get sober. So I really am open to a lot of ideas. But this book on Psalms really stuck out to me when I was at a theological conference over Thanksgiving, so I just thought I'd share that. Psalm 1. Happy are those who do not follow the device of the wicked or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law they meditate day and night. Verses 1 through 2. This first psalm begins with a powerful word, happy. How elusive happiness seemed on my first day without alcohol. I was very sick, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. My hands were shaking, my head throbbing, my stomach churning. I had lost my job, badly hurt the people who loved me most, and turned my back on the very idea of a higher power. I was broken, alone, and filled with despair. I felt miles away from anything even remotely close to happy. Yet, in the first words of the psalm, happy are those, was a glimmer of hope. There are those in the world who are happy. I saw them at an AA meeting. I went to the evening of that first day without a drink. I desperately wanted to feel that way they felt. There, in verse 2, was a clue that I didn't fully understand yet. Those happy people find their delight in meditating on God's teachings day and night. At this point, I was willing to try anything to stop the pain, so I started reading a psalm, a section from the big book, and praying every day. It was the first step in a long journey of recovery, a journey toward happiness. And to close the reading, they have a little prayer. God of happy people, thank you for giving us a glimpse of a better way. Please keep us sober today. And that's it. It's a day at a time, always just a day at a time. So I hope you guys come back. I'm going to continue doing Reddit stories, things I'm reading, also interviewing people, maybe not just people who are sober and addicts, but people who've walked along people who are sober. I've also thought about interviewing some of my family about it. So anyways, thank you all for listening, and I hope you all have a blessed week. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast, Why Are You Sober? If you would like to come on the show and share your story, I would love to talk with you regarding any addiction. This podcast is not just about alcohol addiction, but sobriety of any addiction. The more stories we have, the more stories people can relate to and gain some experience, strength, and hope. You can reach me at my email, asonofrecovery@gmail.com. That is asonofrecovery@gmail.com. Please subscribe and rate us, and as always, I'm wishing you all peace, love, and a whole lot of joy.